Welcome to another edition of the Sim Racing Garage. I'm Barry Rowland. In this episode, we'll be reviewing the new MARK-1 pedal set from the guys at Simforge. At first glance, this pedal set seems to be almost too good to be true. With full-size pedals constructed from 3mm carbon steel, a brake pedal with a big 80kg load cell, contactless hall sensors on the clutch and the throttle, and an included beefy-looking pedal base at the price of $330 plus shipping. Time to put it through the SRG's review process and see how they do. So, let's get to it. Let's take a closer look at these Simforge MARK-1 pedals. First, out of the box, this feels like a pedal set that should cost more than $333. I'll tell you that right up front, just because of the build quality that goes into these. These are made of carbon steel. It's all 3mm thick plate everywhere you look, and of course it has a very nice black powder coat finish to it. There are no sharp edges anywhere I could detect, which sometimes you'll see that in the lower entry price level kind of equipment that we get here at the SRG. It just looks very well done here, right out of the box. We'll go over a little bit of the features here. Now, this is the clutch, and what applies to the clutch applies pretty much to the throttle, except for the mechanism here. So first off, we have face plates on here, or pedal pads, what do you want to call them, that are completely adjustable. You notice how each one of these holes has a countersunk bevel on it, so that you can move this anywhere in these holes. Now, you are limited by the spacing of the two bolts here, and you can see on the back where they bolt to the lever. It has a reinforcing plate back here that goes into the side of the levers. Typical of the construction we see in this kind of constructed pedal. So yeah, nice that they did that. A lot of time manufacturers will just put them up here, and yeah, you can't move them around, which is kind of a shame. But here we can do up and down, not only with the holes, but we have some slots back here to use it for up and down. And we'll go over the adjustments when we get there. But it's well thought out is my point here. Yeah, just everything looks well done here. They have on the lever itself, in fact, let me get the throttle for that. It's a little easier to manipulate the throttle. The two pieces of metal here that form the lever have a little hook in the front of them. See a little hook there? Oh, that's showing up. There it is. See that hook on the bottom here? So this piece right here is the hook I'm talking about. It's got this piece of, it's like a plastic. It is a little bit, you can press a little bit on it, but it's a damper in there. So when the lever snaps back, there is no noise. Very nice. They also have a sound damper in there, which looks to be like some fuel hose in there. Pretty nice. So when we go back, you can hear that, but you'll never hear that when you're actually using the pedal itself, I imagine. The pieces in here are some 3D printed, which I believe is PLA. And that piece right here is holding a magnet, because these actually have hall sensors in them for these pedals. No potentiometers in these pedals. Pretty neat. I'll show you let's look at it this way first. You can see the circuit board, and again, this is their own proprietary design for their hall sensor. And the hall sensor obviously is soldered to the board. Where's the hall sensor? I'm going the wrong way there. There it is. So that's where our hall sensor is. Now you can see, well, maybe you can't see it. Give you a better angle of it. There's our magnet. So our magnet's sticking down in here, and that's part of that piece that I was just talking about, right? So when we push this down, that magnet gets closer to, there we go, the sensor. So it's detecting the magnetic field of the magnet. And that's how this is working. Very cool design, I think. Not only that, but if you look here, you can see that this circuit board is held on with these two bolts here. Let's a better look at it. There we go. These bolts here, right? So there is a slot next to them, and these are also sitting in a slot. The reason I'm pointing that out is you can move this circuit board up and down. You can't see it from here, and that's why I wanted to point it out. You can see the other slot right there. But you can actually move it, because it's in that slot, up and down. And what that does is it changes the relative position of the actual sensor in here to the magnet itself as it comes down. See if I can get enough angle here you guys can see. Now remember, the magnet is up in there, that piece right there, and you can see the sensor right there, I'm going to bring the lever down, and you can see the magnet. Let's do it this way. All right, so it might not be easy to see from this angle, but the magnet is actually behind the sensor a bit in relation to where that sensor is when it comes down. So what that means is I can adjust the sensitivity of this action by taking this board, loosening these bolts, and sliding it back towards the magnet this way. So as it gets closer to the magnet, when the magnet comes down, then there's more magnetic field for it to sense, which makes it, let's get another angle of it there for you. So yeah, then we'll be able to adjust that if we want it to be more sensitive. So it's cool there's actually an adjustment for that. I would never have seen that if they didn't point that out, because I would have think, yeah, this is already set at the factory and you don't want to mess with that stuff. So that's how the hall sensors are working. On the back here, again, we'll see some plastic bits here, or actually 3D printed PLA bits here that are holding some standoffs, right? Some separators, air spreaders. And this is another part of the circuit board in here. That's really the breakout board that is letting this RJ45 port be mounted to it. And we'll be plugging obviously a cable into this port and going over to our main controller electronics that we'll see in a minute. We have a spring in here as far as adjustments go, and we'll go over the adjustments in more detail. We can adjust the stops here. You can see the slot there. We also have angle adjustments down here. And by the way, all these bolts in here and nuts, all stainless steel. So nothing's going to rust on you. We have obviously a rod end up front here, taking care of the duties of keeping things from binding up. We have bronze inserts everywhere there's a pivot point. You can see the bronze inserts here, and there, and there. And we also have them back here on the little bar that moves when we actually action the throttle pedal. And the same thing goes, exactly the same thing, except it's a little difference in the way this one works because it's a clutch pedal. So when I push this one down, this swing arm will actually come up. Careful there. So as it comes up, it gives you that pressure plate feel, the springs that are in a pressure plate in a clutch pack, as you push through those springs, and then it doesn't take much tension at all to hold it there. As soon as you let off a little bit, it'll kick back. So I'm anxious to see what this feels like once I get it in there. And you can see there are some holes in here that are going to allow us to adjust that clutch too. So as we adjust it in these holes, in other words, we can just put these bolts in a higher one or a lower one, it's going to change the feel. And we also have a preload bolt here, or nut, just like on the throttle, that we can preload the spring itself. And of course we have the slots here, so the higher we go in this slot, the harder it's going to be to push the pedals. And that goes with the throttle also. But again, we'll get to the adjustments in another segment rather. And we have flanges here, obviously for mounting, right here. We're going to be mounting to that base plate back there that comes with the kit for $333. Pretty crazy. Right, so that's all you need to see on this. Let's look at the brake pedal real quick. All this stuff is very hefty and heavy duty feeling when you take it out of the box, especially the brake pedal. This thing is 5 pounds and 5 ounces when you pick it up. So that's what, 2.5 kilograms, somewhere around there. So very hefty when you get it in. It's got a big fat pedal face on it, whereas we can see the throttle has a nice face on it too with the kick out, so you can do your heel and toe. And the clutch is just a regular flat plate like this. So they're all a little bit different. 3 different pedal plates too. So again, this has got the same features where we can move this around, but it's a nice big fat flat surface that we can put our foot on that, yeah, it's going to get the job done. Now, we're using bumpers here. There's our load cell down the bottom. I'm just going to action it real quick here if I can keep it action a little bit. So we have a spring in the system, in the stack when it comes to the factory. That gives us a little bit of that pre-push, if you will, before it starts engaging the polyurethane bumpers in here. And in that stack, it has this cool, I got this little board we'll talk about in a second attached here. This has some sleeves on it. These are deep sleeves that are holding these bumpers. And the bumpers, and they're pretty deep because this is the length of the bumper. So we hold it up there. You can see how deep this bumper goes in there. Now, of course, what those do is when we're compressing these bumpers, it only allows them to spread out so much. So they don't keep spreading out and keep getting, it doesn't feel as good as regulating the pressure with these sleeves on here like this. Regular stacks with washers in it allow it to swell, which actually gives you a different feel than when you're pushing on a bumper and it swells up and then stops and it can't swell up anymore. Now, of course, you get to the same point if you just have washers, but it adds a mushiness to the feel, I think, compared to this kind of construction. It's very cool to see this in a pedal set at this price point. Again, I'm pretty amazed at what I'm seeing here. Let's see what else we can talk about here. They have a single rod here, a long shoulder, pretty much a solid rod until we get up here to the rod end, where it goes into the rod end. We have a nut up there, and we'll be pulling this out when we change our bumpers for a different feel as far as the brake goes. So again, we'll get to that in adjustment segment. So here we have a slot here that we can adjust up and down, again, for different tensions. Right now it's in the hardest position to push. And of course we have a load cell in here. This is an 80 kilogram load cell. First time I've seen this constructed this way. We have the load cell actually as a load bearing part of this assembly. We have all this on the back here attached to the load cell. Of course the load cell is going to flex and do what it does. Send the information to the little load cell amplifier circuit over here. First time I've seen a construction quite like this. Unique, I would say. One of the reasons I keep doing these reviews is I enjoy looking at different design aspects, or the way that designers come up with different ways to use a load cell. Now we'll go ahead and take a quick look at the circuit board here. This is their own proprietary design, and it's the circuit board sandwiched between two pieces again of this ABS 3D print. We have an RJ45 port on there, just like the rest of the pedals. And if you look in here, I don't know how well you're going to see this. We have a sensitivity and an offset potentiometer. See these white things up here? Those are potentiometers. I'm trying to show you and hold the brake at the same time. So these are little set potentiometers. So we have one for sensitivity and we have one for offset. So I wouldn't mess with that. I'm sure it's set at the factory and no reason to mess with those, right? But this is the amplifier circuit that's going to go into the other board I'm going to show you in a minute that will do the USB conversion for everything. And it's a 16-bit resolution for the whole set of pedals, which is very good. All right, anything else on the brake? No, pretty much everything's the same as far as the rest of the pedals when it comes to that. Now let's talk about that board. This is a Arduino board setup from Simforge, and you can see it's very nicely done here. Got some plexiglass. It is floating in the air, so it's not going to do much as far as EMI mitigation. And that's always a pet peeve with me here at the SRG. I like to see these kind of things in solid enclosures. Metal enclosures are best to try to mitigate any EMI that you might run into. But again, at the price point this pedal set comes in, I'm not really expecting that kind of stuff. This is the 16-bit Arduino board that's on here. And yeah, all custom stuff. In fact, on the back, I don't know how well you guys are going to read this, but it says here, it says Simforge, and then it says, it has the, if you no longer go for the gap that exists, you are no longer a race driver. Words to live by, right? Got to send it, man. All right, so other than that, pretty simple here. As far as mounting goes on this, yeah, that's something you're just going to have to figure out where you're going to put this, because I don't see any specific place to mount it or holes to mount it. Maybe to the pedal base back here. I'll figure something out to get it mounted though. Right, so let's go ahead and put that away. Now, they also give you this right here. This is a ground wire, and it's prefab, so they've got the terminations on there for you so that you can put it. In fact, this came with a wire attached between this standoff, these aluminum standoffs on both sides, between the aluminum standoff and the board in here like that. So it was actually attached right in there. I took it out just for showing on the video. No sense in having it there if I didn't need it right away. So this allows you to at least have a grounding point if you do run into EMI issues, and will help cure that. Now, the bumpers themselves we get a whole set here. You've already saw that we have a red and a yellow in the brake. So we have another red and a yellow, so we can go 2 yellows or 2 reds. We have 2 blacks in case we want to go to blacks. And we'll get to the durometers, or rather the shore ratings on these once I get to the brake pedal and we get a closer look. Now this little guy here is intended to take the place of the pre-tensioning spring up here. So if you don't like that feel on your brake pedal, then you can go ahead and take this bumper and stick it in there. And take the spring out, obviously. There you go. So it seems like we're going to have a lot of adjustment there. We have some cables that they give with the kit. Go put these back over here. Get these out of the way. And you get these gray cables. These are Cat 6 cables and professionally finished. They have a, I would say this is about not quite a meter long, but you don't need them too long because we're only connecting between the pedals themselves and the board over here. So wherever you put this is really going to dictate how long a cable you're going to need. So we get 3 of these, and we get a white cable down here also, which is the USB cable. Those out of the way. And this has, of course, a USB-B termination on it, and has a USB-A. And this is a, yeah, this is the Cat 6. Let's see what this is. That doesn't say it. Just says 28. But it's not shielded. So this is not a shielded USB deal here. Okay. But we do have ferrite cores on it. It's always a good thing. Now we're going to take a look at the pedal base that comes with the kit. This is not an accessory. You buy the kit, or you buy your pedals, and this comes with it. And you can see it's made out of profile. Now I've got things loose. That's one thing you might hear some rattling going on. We have 4040 series right here attached with 2 corner brackets, and we have a 4120 series on the back here. Now this is 360 millimeters wide. I already measured that part. So that's the width we get for adjustability on the pedal width, which should be good, I think. Now on the side here, you'll notice there's some brackets. And these brackets, you can move them around. You can see we have some holes here, and you can move these brackets around to change where the position is of this, not only from here, but also in the holes themselves. You got a lot of adjustability here for angle. That's why I have it loose right now, so it'll do that. And it's curious the way they've done this bracket on the front. This one obviously is not meant to do too much because it has these flanges on it. Let me show you what that looks like. See that flange there? To keep it from tilting. And the other one's made for tilting. So I think there's enough room in here to do whatever you want to get the angle you want. It's got the nice cutout there saying Simforge. Again, a red powder-coated steel plate up here. Again, all the edges are nicely done. No sharp edges anywhere. So yeah, the heel plate's pretty nice. And of course the pedals are going to fit on this heel plate like this. Just use a throttle. And so we'll put a bolt in here and in here. And then of course we'll set them where we want. We should have plenty of room to slide this around. Let's get out of my way. In fact, if I put the throttle on, I'll take the brake pedal, put it on, and then we'll put the clutch on. So I think you got a lot of room. Let's put the clutch at the extreme over there, and I'll put the throttle at the extreme over here. And then, yeah, I think we got plenty of room here to be moving this brake pedal around. So if you're doing a left foot braking, you might want your brake pedal further over here. Or if you're doing heel and toe, you might want it over here. So again, very easy to adjust with the kind of fasteners they put on this kit. I'm going to take these back off. I'm not going to try to move that base with all those on there. Because you know what's going to happen if I do that. All right. So we have some hardware for this. First off, let's show you these. You get 4 of these corner brackets, gusseted corner brackets. And what they're for is attaching this base plate to whatever you're going to attach it to. In my case, it's going to be some 40 series profiles. And you can see we've got some inserts in here. See those? So they press some inserts in. These are M8 threads. And we'll be attaching our corner brackets like this. And then, of course, we have that bottom slot in there to attach to whatever you want to attach it to. And we'll put 2 on each side. That's how it's designed to be attached. Now, you don't have to do it that way. Because it's profile, we have options, right? You could actually put these back here if you needed to, or one of them, or something like that if you have some kind of a stability issue. So I really like that they're using the profile here just because of all the things that we can do. And also the adjustment of the heel plate here can do a lot more than if we had some kind of a fixed system. I really like it when manufacturers goes with profile. It's not the prettiest thing in the world. I agree with that, all right? But it doesn't have the styling cues of some other things. But I tell you what, it's very, very functional. And you just can't go wrong with it if that's what you want. The most adjustability will be in profile. Now in the box, they also give us some bolts here. Now they give us the M8 bolts. And those are for the corner brackets that go on here. Nice that they included those. Button head units. Looks to be probably more, I'm thinking that's a 5mm head on that. And we also have these M6. Let's go ahead and grab one that's already done. M6 bolt. All this is stainless steel. Not sure about the T-nut itself, perhaps, but it has that type of T-nut on it. Now these T-nuts, I kind of like these because you can actually put these preload stuff on these and just set the hole, whatever it is, set it into the channel, and then as you tighten this up, this will turn and then lock against the sides of the channel. These have these little radiuses on them. See those? Well, you're going to see that, you know, against my black shirt a little bit. Anyway, we've got a little radius on this side compared to it's much straighter on the other side. And the reason is because when we tighten this up, it will rotate this way into the channel, and these bevels or radiuses will engage the sides of the channels. I kind of like these. Now, they're not the perfect T-nut setup. It depends on your situation, obviously, but for this, it's going to be perfect. So it's nice that they included all this hardware that's going to mount right into our channels here. So yeah, they really got this thought out, I think. Anything else we want to talk about here on the closer look? I don't think so. I think it's all been said. So they've done a real good job on these pedals as far as, you know, the price point coming in at $333. It's certainly punching above its weight in the presentation and the quality of the materials being used here. And of course, how they're going to operate underfoot is really going to be the determining factor. But I got a feeling they're going to do pretty good. Now we're going to take a look at the adjustments available on this pedal set. I'm going to use the throttle for most of this, and we'll use the clutch and the brake pedal when we get there to their own specific adjustments. So we'll go ahead and push those back a little. So first thing is how much pressure it takes to push this pedal, right? So this is going to be very subjective, obviously. But this is too easy for me, I can tell already, because if I'm just pushing it like this, yeah, it's not doing anything. So yeah, I want it tighter than that. Now, there's a couple of ways that we're going to adjust the pressure or the tension. And the first major one is going to be the slot in here, which is very common to these pedals when they're constructed this way. We're going to loosen this, and we're going to slide it up in the slot to make it harder to push, depending on how much effort we want to put on the pedal. I'm going to go midway with this. Now, there's a socket head cap that runs all the way through the rod end, a couple aluminum spacers, and comes out the other side into this nylock nut over here. And that is a 10 millimeter nut. It's a 5 millimeter metric size for the socket head cap. So let's go ahead and get this where I want it to be. I'm going to go ahead and just squeeze this up. Usually I just put my fingers underneath the bottom part, grab that socket head cap on the top, squeeze it together, and there you go. I'm probably going to want it midway, but not all the way. But I have it all the way up because I want to show you guys something that's very common. It's a characteristic of this type of pedal when it's constructed this way and has that slot in there. As I start to tighten this down, it will actually want to go down in that slot. I'm going to kind of hold it up with my thumb a little bit, put a little pressure on it. But as I turn it clockwise, you can see it's walking down. So you got to find a way to hold it up to tighten it up in the position you want it. I'm going to go midway with this. If I can get it back in there the way I want it. Right about there, I'm thinking. What I'm going to do is take this 10 millimeter wrench that I used on this 10 millimeter nut before and put it on this. And I'm going to, if you have somebody to help you, it's easier to do this. But I'm just going to kind of lean it against my stomach here, and I'm going to get my wrench on here using the box end, as I call it. And then I'm going to get my hand, 3 of my fingers underneath this rod end going this way. And then my pinky knuckle is going to be holding the wrench on, like that. So this allows me to put pressure this way into my stomach and keep this thing from going anywhere when I'm actually tightening it down with my wrench. So that's what the principle behind it. So let's see how well this works. So I don't want it to move any, so I'm going to put some pressure on it, pushing it into my stomach as I'm tightening it, because I don't want that baby to move. And there we go. It's like that. See how easy that was? Now, let's try it. Yeah, it's definitely got some harder pressure to push this pedal all the way back now. Is that going to be enough? It might even be too much. It's hard to tell on the bench. You have to get it underfoot really to get it where you want it to be. But I think that's where I'm going to want it to be. Now, there's also a fine-tune adjustment, and that is the preload on the spring back here. We also have a 10 millimeter nut here. It's nylock, and it pushes the spring this way. If we tighten it clockwise, loosen it counterclockwise, it takes pressure off the spring. It's going to be easier. It's a way to fine-tune the feel of the pedal in general. And I'm not going to mess with that right now, but again, it's a very simple matter of just taking the wrench and turning it whichever way you want. Loosen is counterclockwise, tighten it back up clockwise. Easy enough. And I like the way they did the springs here. There is the capturing piece in here that's capturing the springs. You see this little sleeve sticking out in the back here? Well, that washer part there also has another piece just like that coming out of it too that fits inside that spring. So they've done a good job with capturing the springs and retaining the springs so it won't drop anywhere. Very cool. All right. So now we've got that done, we'll talk about the stop. Again, we have a stop back here, but we do not have a stop for adjustment in here. The only stop is this plastic piece here. It's a steel bar, but it's got a plastic bumper piece on the top there. You can see it's almost pinching down on it a little bit there. So as I pull the throttle back, you can see that there's little pieces there come away from the plastic, and when I let go, they seat back down on it. So that's going to keep everything quiet, but there's no way to adjust that part of the stop, or the return, if you will. But down here, we've got this piece of fuel line hose right here, and we have a socket head cap going on this side and on this side. There's not a nut on either end, which is kind of nice when you want to adjust this. Now all I have to do is take my wrench and get in here like this, loosen this up on one side, loosen it up on the other side, and then I can freely move it back and forth. Of course, if I had it up here, it wouldn't be much pedal throw. Well, it moved on me. It wouldn't be much pedal throw if I had it up there. I like a lot of pedal throw, so I'm just going to move it right back to where it was and leave it there, because I know me, and yeah, I like a lot of throw in the pedal. Now I'm also going to show another adjustment here. I'm going to loosen these guys on the front, and then I'm going to loosen the ones in the back here, because now we're going to adjust the angle of the pedal. And I like it where it is. I've already done that. It's kind of straight up. If you look at the clutch angle compared to that, you see the clutch is laying back a little more. So I like the angle that it's at right now. I've been playing with these things, but I want to show you guys the adjustments. So what you would do is pretty simple here. You just want to loosen these guys on each side here like this, like that, and then we would pull them out one at a time, or two at a time, depends on what you want to do. But they're independent of each other on these plates. Each plate is its own independent piece, see? So then I can put it anywhere I want to. And it came in the second hole up, right there. And that laid it back a bit. I wanted it to stand up a little bit, so I went to the third hole up. And again, very subjective stuff here. So you put your bolt back in, like that, and tighten it back up. Very simple. And you want to make sure you tighten the front up too, where your main pivot point is and the bronze bushings are. So yeah, I like this. The way it's very simple and quick to adjust. And also, I want to point out also there's a spacer here. And typically on this type of pedal construction, when you're doing this height adjustment, there's only one spacer back here. There's not another piece. Here there's another piece which is also holding our electronic segment here. So that also acts to keep this piece here from falling away. In other words, it doesn't go crazy on you. It stays where it's at because it's connected by this PLA piece here, so it won't fall. So, very cool. You don't have to worry about it floating around on you. So this is very quick to do, these adjustments. Now, pedal face itself is a little bit more time consuming, but not that bad. Now, we have some slots in the back here, so it allows the face of this pedal to go up and down, right? Without doing much except loosening these nuts and bolts. We have an M6, I believe this might be an M5 bolt in here, but that is a 8mm nut, and that is a Nylak nut, I believe, yeah. And there's a washer in there too. We have a flathead screw on the top. Easy enough to get this. I have a 8mm wrench here, and I have a M3 for the front. And we're simply going to put that in the back and loosen it up. And they are Nylak, so they don't come loose right away. You have to loosen them up before it will come all the way off. And I think that's far enough there. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out just to show you this. Again, I like where the pedal is right now as far as the face, so I'm not going to change that. So we've got this flathead M6. That looks like an M6 maybe. More like an M5. Hard to tell unless I put my gauge on it. But there's the flathead screw. We get a focus here. And of course, that fits nice and flush into these countersunk holes. We also have a washer, and we've got our Nylak nut, the 8mm piece. Now, if I was going to do some adjustments, I would pull the other one out and then put this wherever I want to based on the slots on the back here, as far as where I can go in those slots, and move it around anywhere I want. I'm actually going to take this off so we can see what this, I usually take the top off last because of what you're seeing here. it's going to fall down into the slot. See it moving in the slot now, but see how it's rotating? Yeah. That's why I usually do not take the top off first. I broke my sequence. All right, so we got a washer back here too we got to pay attention to. I'm just going to kind of pull this off, see if I can grab them all at once. Look at that. Almost. There we go. Got our washer off the back. Let's take a look at the plate. I just want to look at one of these 3mm thick steel plates that they're using here with the powder coat. And you can see all these countersunk holes we have here. I like the design here where this is kicking out so you can do the heel and toe. I actually swing my heel out to do heel and toe. I know a lot of people actually roll their foot over to it. It really doesn't matter as long as you get it done. So there we go. And again, we can see our slots here, depending on how I want to adjust my pedal face. And that's obviously going to be very subjective. So we've got everything, I think. The preload, easy enough to change that. Again, I like the way they've done the capturing pieces in here. You can't really see that inner piece in there because of the lights, but I'll try to give you a shot of it inside of this spring here, which captures it. Nice retaining bit in there. So everything else is going to be different. The clutch, really the only thing the clutch difference is going to be this, and we'll cover that in the next video. And even the brake pedal has the same adjustments on the front. You can see this slot in this brake pedal. We can go up and down on that too. But of course, the brake pedal, we're going to have a lot to play with in here. So yeah, that's let's just call that the throttle adjustment and basic adjustments available to us on this pedal set. And we'll get to the clutch next. Now we're going to adjust the clutch, and not the tension on the clutch because we covered that again in the throttle segment. It's just another slot there. So the higher we go in the slot, the harder it is to push. What I'm going to be concentrating on is the 3 holes in the back of the bracket here. Now I've already moved it up 1 hole just to get a handle on the best way to go about doing this. And you can see right now, if I press on this pedal, how much angle and how far back this pedal goes for the clutch to engage. See how far that goes back? Now I'm hitting the stop down here at its furthest point back. So what we want to do is try to change that action to where, see how far back that pedal's going? That's too far back. I want it to be a little less than that. And to do that, I can adjust this down and, of course, adjust my stop down here. If I adjust the stop, though, what happens is, go ahead and adjust that, put it up front. Again, we're just loosening these bolts here with the 5mm wrench. I'm going to put that up like halfway. Then we'll go ahead and snug it back up. There we go. Now I want to push it. See that? But now I'm not getting that clutch pressure plate spring effect that was in it when it was down at the middle hole and we had it all the way back. It's stopping me from getting that. But I am stopping how far back the pedal goes. So I'm going to put it back to the way it comes from the factory because I preferred it that way. And if I want more tension, I'll just use my slot here to adjust that. Let's go ahead and put this all the way back again. Tighten it up. All right. Now, what we're interested in here is this is where it gets complicated. Well, it's not complicated, it's just it's a little fiddly. We've got 2 bolts here, and nylock nuts on each side, and these are 10mm. And we have to take these all the way out to be able to lower down into the next hole. See, we've got 2 more holes there. From the factory, it's in the middle. I tried it on the bottom, and it was a kind of a weak throw. I didn't like it at all. I know why they set it at the middle, because I think middle is the sweet spot for this particular setup. But I wanted to move it around and show you guys how to change it if you wanted to. This is not bad if you want a long pedal travel. It'll work fine. But I like it. Yeah, I think I'm going to like it better the other way because I've been testing a little bit. So anyway, I just want to show you guys how to get this out. There's a couple things we have to do. We have to release the preload tension on the spring. Obviously, you don't want any tension on this stuff. And we're going to have to take both of these bolts out. There's a couple of washers in there. And we have to be mindful of those. And we're going to have to pull the rod in out of the front to make this the easiest thing to do. Well, that's the way I did it. It's not that bad. The rod end on the front here is captured by this M6 bolt. It's a socket head cap. We've got a 10mm nut on the other side. So we need to get this out. But the first thing I'm going to do is, like I said before, is relieve the tension on this preset. So I'm going to turn this nut counterclockwise until I get it really loose and I know that it's loose. So bear with me while I do that. Should be able to see some space in here. It'll start jiggling around a little bit. A couple more turns, I think we got it. There we go. See, that's pretty loose there. Maybe one more turn. All right, so now the spring is pretty loose in here, this whole setup, right? So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and take the rod end out, and that is a 5mm on this side, and again another 10mm on this lilac nut on this side. So let's go ahead and do that. We do have to pull it all the way out, so let me get my ratcheting wrench in the right direction here. Okay, so now I got my nut loose. I can pull that off. And again, it's just another 10mm lilac nut. Set that aside. Now there's two spacers in here. These are steel spacers. I thought they were aluminum, but they got stuck on the magnet, so I know they're steel now. And I'm going to pull those out and go from there. Okay, so once I pull this bolt out, these spacers are going to fall. I'm going to pull it out only far enough for one spacer to let go. That's the idea anyway. So let's see if I can catch it. I'm pulling the bolt out, and there we go. Got that spacer. Picked it out of the back end. That's what it looks like. So now we'll go ahead and pull it the rest of the way out. The rod end's going to fall down. Well, it won't fall down because it's being caught by the spring back here. Let me give you a better look at it that way. And we got one more spacer in here. I'm going to try to capture that when I take my bolt out. So we have our bolt. And it's threaded all the way. No shoulder on this anywhere. I was wondering about that when I took it apart. So now we got our parts for that. Now we have this loose. We have this to come loose now. Well, it's really loose down here, isn't it? Because the bolt actually fell back down over here. All right, so let me go ahead and loosen up these. Remember, these are 10mm on the outside. This is the bolt, and we got the nut on the inside in here. So that's all I'm going to do is take these out. And you'll notice there's a brass washer or bronzer brass washer on either side of this piece of the bracket. So I got one next to the bolt head, and I've got one in between there. So they're going to fall out. That's why I wanted to point that out to you as you're taking this apart. It's just part of the process of getting it to come apart. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Once we get the nylock a certain length or out a certain way, we can take it off with our fingers. So that's what I'm going to do now. It's far enough out, I believe. So I'm just going to catch that, make sure it doesn't fall. Hopefully it doesn't fall. And there's our other nylock nut, a 10mm piece. Now the bolt should come out, but I'm going to loosen this side first, because if you loosen both sides, everything gets loose and it's easier to work on it. So obviously that's going to be a plus for us, trying to struggle with it. It's pretty fiddly anyway, so yeah, we want to make it as easy as possible. Okay. If I can hang on to this thing long enough. Okay, I think that's got it. So we'll go ahead and pull that nylock nut off the inside. And I dropped that one. Another nut. And now we've got everything loose. So I'm going to pull one of these bolts out. See how they're kind of sitting there. And you can see the washers a little better now down in there. I'm going to pull this one out first. Everything's loose, so it's not that hard. I'm just going to kind of pull it out. It might be, if it's brand new and you've never taken it out before, it might be a little stiff. Now this washer is going to fall out of here. So I'm going to put my finger on there and do my best to catch it. But I may not be able to. There it goes. It actually kind of stuck. There's a little bit of grease in here, so it may have stuck. So there's our two washers. And they look like they could be bronze or brass. Maybe brass. All right, so you don't want to lose those, obviously. We're going to do the same thing over here. And see if I can get lucky and catch both of the washers without it going crazy on me. All right, here we go. Got this out. Here's the washer. The whole assembly will come out then. Here's the other washer. All right, so now what I'm going to do is put this back in, obviously, but I'm going to go into the middle hole. So let me do that. It's the same thing going in as it was going out, but it's a little tricky here to get these washers lined up. The first side's not too bad. I'm going to put your first washer on your bolt, and then I'm going to kind of, because we're not really attached to anything yet, I can pick this out and just hold it up there with my finger and stick it through. Like that. Well, almost like that. There we go. So now I got them through. So it's easier to do it on this side because it's the first side. I'll go ahead and put it back in. I'm going to the middle hole, remember? I'll go ahead and push it through. Now I'll go ahead and get my nut. Turn this around so you can see what's going on. It's all the way through. I'll go ahead and get my nut and put that on. Get it started. I just want to make sure that nothing comes apart. You want to cross thread it. Make sure you get it on straight. It should go right on. There we go. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get the other piece. This is where it gets a little tricky, but there is a way to do this easier than you might think. How am I going to hold this washer up in between this plate here? There's not much clearance in there while I'm getting this and go through all the plate and the washer. Yeah, so anyway, this is what you should do. You just turn it sideways. Then we're going to use gravity to help us. So I'm going to push this washer over where the hole needs to be. Then I'm going to take my bolt. There we go. See? No problems. See how easy that was? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put my other nut on, like so. And I'm going to go ahead and put my rod end down because it's like I said, when everything's loose, it's easier to work on this stuff. So remember, we got to get our bolt and everything back in here. So the first thing I need is to get my spacer back in here. Now these spacers are different widths. So you want to pay attention when you take it out, which one you put in and take out. In my case, I need the thinner one to go towards this side over here, not this side. So I'm going to go ahead and start my spacer first. Go ahead and get it in there. Get my rod end down here. Get it pushed back so I can get my bolt started through it. It's not easy for you to see what I'm doing here, but that's what I'm doing. I just want to get it started in that rod end. You see what I was doing? Need to get the spacer on the inside, not on the outside. Thought that was a little bit too easy, right? There we go. All right, I'll get it right eventually. So now I'm going to get the rod end down in here. We're going to push it back. I'm putting pressure towards the back of it so I can get it lined up with my bolt again. And you also have to line up the ball in the rod end. So like I said, it can be a bit fiddly getting this done. This is one of the harder parts. Take pressure off the spring, it makes it easier. All right, so I'm in the rod end now. But I got to get my other spacer in. And you can see how my bolt is just inside the rod end there. See that? So I still have the space in here. So now I'm going to get these guys. Needle nose pliers to hold my spacer up. And try to do this all at once. Get my spacer in and push the bolt home like this with my finger. Get everything kind of lined up. It should push right through. At least enough to hold my spacer, and there it is. I'm not through this side yet. You can see I'm kind of hanging out. But I'm just going to push back on it, line it up, and there it goes. So not too bad if you follow that procedure. That's the easiest way I found to do. Now we're golden, right? All we got to do is tighten everything up. So what I'm going to do is tighten up the front first. I don't need that for that. So I'll go ahead and get my rod end section tightened up. Gotta love these ratcheting wrenches, huh? Makes things a lot easier. Now also, this might be a time where you decide whether you want to go up into the slot or not. I kind of like the way it felt, but I might change it once. Again, once you have it underfoot, mounted solidly and pushing on it, it gives you a totally different feel a lot of times. So I'm just going to leave it where it is right now and just go ahead and give it a snug up. So now, only thing left to do, well, two things left to do. We got to get these guys tight again, but not too tight. We got to leave them loose enough so we've got plenty of play in this mechanism back here. But we also have to do our preload again, but that'll be the last thing I do. So now I'm just going to go back here and do the same thing in reverse that I did, taking them off. Use my ratcheting wrench on this side. There we go. And I'll capture this over here. You can kind of turn them both ways. It goes a little faster when you're using this kind of stuff. If I don't beat my pedal up to death. All right. So it just got tight there, so I'm just going to back it off a little bit. I want to make sure that, again, you don't bind it up. So we'll go ahead and do the other side. Use my ratcheting wrench. Two wrenches always get them mixed up. I can get my box in, but I'm afraid if I got it on there, I would be able to get it off once I was done. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. Okay. Remember, the nylocks aren't going to back off, so we don't have to get this thing super tight. I want to make sure I can move it like that. Don't want it bound up, because if it's binding, it's not going to work. All right, so everything looks good. The last thing I got to do is get back to my preload here. And if you get it real loose, I want to make sure you line up these retainer rings pieces here, these plastic pieces. Make sure the ring is seated properly in this section right here. Just pay attention to that. Because you get it all tightened to where you want it, and it's crooked, it's not going to do any good. I'm not going to put a lot of tension on this. I'm just going to get it. And you can feel the tension as you're tightening it, getting harder. I think that's good. Now, after all that work, let's see what we got. Yeah. It feels different now. It's still going pretty far back. But I don't know if you can tell, there's still more room now in between this section, though, than there was before when I was doing it, when it was in the very top. Again, you could stop it a little bit sooner if you want, but to get the full stroke out of it and to feel it, feel that spring pressure piece, you have to leave it like this. And I'm going to leave it like this. If I want more stiffness, again, we can always raise it up there. So there you have it. That is the clutch pedal adjustments, and at least the way I do it. It can be a little fiddly, but that certainly is doable. So there you go. So now we're going to go over the adjustments of the brake pedal as far as how it feels underfoot, and that would be the adjustment on these bumpers, and we have a spring in here also. Now, I'm going to show you how this works as far as how the mechanism for tightening and preloading this stack. Now, we have a long bolt here, essentially, and it has a very long shoulder on it. It's smooth all the way up to where this nut is. So that allows, obviously, things to move smoothly over this smooth part when we're pushing it. Now, this is a preload also. So I can actually turn this in clockwise. And when I do that, this nut is not moving anywhere. What's happening is these threads are going into the rod end. Now, there's a little bit of space in this rod end left over where I can actually turn it in a little bit. And as I do that, it loosens the stack up itself. And I'm going to bottom out here. There it is. That's the bottom out. So you can see I already had a lot of thread in this rod end because it only went in that far. I can pull it back out this way, or I can push it back in. Now what that does right now, when I pushed it in clockwise and went into the rod end, it actually moves this whole assembly forward off this back plate here. So it makes things looser. What I mean by that, you can see how loose this is? And this one over here. Now if I put it down and press on it, back and forth, there's a little bit of play in there. Not much, a little bit. So I could, again, counterclockwise. That means I'm screwing out this bolt from the rod end again, and that's going to put compression. It's going to press everything back up against this plate where our spacer is down there. And you can just turn it by hand. If you want to, you can get a wrench, 6 mil. That's what this bolt is, 6 millimeter. And as I tighten this down, I can feel it getting tighter. And now, when I try to move the cup, it doesn't move. So I just want to get you to understand that first before we get into actually taking this thing apart and putting some bumpers in here. So that's what we're going to do now. It is a bit of a process, but yeah, it doesn't bother me so much. It just takes a little bit of time to get this done. Now, I'm all the way out as far as I can go by hand to compress this stack. So what I want to do is I want to start taking this nut and loosening it towards the rod end. So I'm taking the pressure off the stack by loosening this nylock nut. Now, you're going to have to hold this bolt back here when you do it, because it just, obviously, it all turns together. See how that nut's turning with it? So you're going to have a way to hold that. You can use a wrench here and just do this if you want. And I'm going to keep running this nut up towards that rod end like this. And as I do that, obviously, my stack's going to get loose too. But what I'm really trying to do is get room to get the bolt out of that rod end, because it's so far in there, I'm going to have to screw it out to get this off. So you sit here with your wrench and do this, or if you have one of these, make sure I'm going the right way here. Wrong way. This is the right way. I'm going to go ahead and use my little ratchet gun here to help speed things up a little bit. And there it goes. See how it came out of the rod end? Now the rod end is loose. And I have my stack almost loose. So all I have to do now is get this nut all the way off of this bolt, and my stack will come apart. So, and it being nylock, and I still have, you can see how much thread I still have. And this is also a good time to look at this and see how much thread. I would actually run it down a little more. Yeah, I would put this down a little bit more so I have more thread to get started in the rod end when it's time to go back together. But we're going to have to take this completely off. But it gives you a reference of where your threads need to be protruding without be protruding too far that you can't get this rod end back on, right? So take note of that when you're taking this apart. So now I'm going to go ahead and take it the rest of the way off this little nut here. I'll use my power thing again. There we go. So there's that nylock nut. Pretty simple here how this is working, but when you first look at it and try to take it apart, and it can be a little bit confusing the way this is done. So now my stack is loose. I can actually start pulling things off of it. Remember, this pedal is going to want to get in the way too. What I'm going to really do, I think the best way to do this is put your hand under this part of the stack, not this part. And I'm going to pull this rod back through that stack, and as I do that, obviously, it's going to drop in my hand up to the rubber bumper. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up to that so everything gets loose besides that so it doesn't fall off. There we go. And this is going to probably tilt down a little bit. There it goes. So there's our little sockets here, our capture pieces, and you can see how hollow those are. They're pretty big actually compared to the diameter of our bumper. So if you see the bumper sitting in there, it's got a lot of room to move around or to swell up as we compress it. But I like it that it's deep like that. I like this design. We have this washer that goes in between the bumpers. It sits like this and this and this. So you want to make sure you get that right when you put it back together. We have to have this washer in between them. And you can see there's some grease on there. So you might want to put some silicone grease or something on them when you redo, or if you put some in that you haven't had in yet. All right, let's go ahead and put these over here. Now, if you were just going to change these bumpers, this is as far as you need to go. If I wanted to take the yellow one and replace it with a red one, then I would just stop right here, do that, and put it all back together. But what I'm going to do is take this piece off, and this is a small bumper here. Now, this is going to make when you have this in, this pedal can be very, very stiff. If that's what you want, that's fine. I like to have a little bit of play in the first application of the pedal as I'm starting to press on it. Like in most real hydraulic systems, you have that little bit of play in it. So I'm going to take this out. Now, it came from the factory with this spring in here that they provide. So we're going to take the red one, put it over the side there. And the spring is the same length as that red bumper. And you see we have these nice plastic pieces here that capture the spring. It fits in the spring hole so the spring's not flopping around. Very nicely done. Little details like this matter. So now what I'm going to do is put the spring on to the bit of thread that's sticking out. And I'll push that through there like that. And I'm going to stay with the yellow and the red. Just see how that works. I may change that later, but I'm just going to stay with it for now. So I'm going to get my pedal back out of the way and then just do the reverse of what we just did. Start threading it on. And I'll take the washer, get that on. And keep pushing the rod through the stack. And I can start my red stack piece here with its cup. Go ahead and push that through. And there we have it. I'm through all the way. So now we're going to put our nut back on. And I'm going to tighten that down to where I have some threads exposed. Remember, we got to have some threads exposed or we'll never get it back in the rod end trying to do it without that. But you don't have to have much thread exposed. What I'm going to do is go ahead and tighten that up. A little ratchet gun out here going the right way. Hard to do this one-handed, Barry. See how easier that is? Sometimes I can do it with one hand, though. All right, so I'm just going to tighten it up so I get some threads up here. I'm looking down. There we go. That should do it. I'll show you what I got here. So there's a little bit of thread sticking out. So now I want to get my rod end started again. So I'm going to kind of swivel it out. And this has got the spring on it, so this is going to be a little tougher to do than the bumper because of the way the spring is. I'm going to pull this all the way back as far as I can. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit more fiddly to get it in there. So we got to put some pressure, compression. There we go. Now I've got it lined up. As you can see, it's kind of shaking around a little bit when I'm doing this, moving around. That's because the threads probably aren't lined up yet, so I'm going to turn this whole thing and see if there we go. I just heard it pop. So the threads are now, should be lined up in the rod end now. And I can tell by just taking my fingers, not the machine, because you don't want to do this. You want to start with your fingers, make sure everything's doing what you think it should be doing. I think that's threading fine. Again, I'm going to go ahead now. Remember, we got to take the nut now and run it back and compress the stack as we're running it back or turning it back into this. So we get more thread exposed here to go up into our rod end because we want as much thread in that rod end as we can get for support. So you would just hold the back like this and turn the nut. And we're going to turn the nut counterclockwise, and it's clockwise back here to run it down this way onto that thread, like that. And then as I do that, then I can take and run this rod back here, turn it clockwise, and see how now I can start running my thread up into that rod end, like that. But then I'm going to stop again because I can't go any further because of the nut. And I have to run the nut this way again. I'm going to speed that up a little bit. Here we go. But you have to be careful about how much you do, because you don't want to back it out too far. See how my stack is feeling here. It's feeling pretty good right there because we have the spring in it. I'm going to go ahead and back this out some more. Or back it down this way some more. So make sure I got plenty of thread in that rod end. There. I bottom out in the rod end now, and that's not what you want to do. I mean, you could, I suppose, leave it this way, but the manufacturer says that you should leave some room in there. So what I'm going to do is back this out from the rod end itself and leave a little bit of room in there like that. Because now I can actually turn this by hand. But you can see that I have some room in there on my threads before the nut is hitting that rod end. So I can go ahead and do it clockwise and hit it. Or I can just preload a little bit on the spring. So now when I'm doing counterclockwise here, I'm compressing this stack again. And I'm putting preload on the spring itself. And that's totally subjective where you want that to be as far as what you feel when we're pressing on the pedal. So now the spring is moving. Now before, of course, it's hard to do this on the bench without it bolted down. But yeah, now I've got some of that movement before I'm engaging the bumpers themselves. And that's typically the kind of way I like it set up. And again, it's totally subjective. And not only that, but you can take this time now if you want to and turn this aluminum spacer down here that we never took off. It says Simforge on it, so you have the Simforge logo turned back up. You can actually hold that as you do adjustments. So this gives us a preload adjustment now, similar to what we were talking about before. You even got started and I had this one in there. We still could do that a little bit and make things loose. And I can still do that here. I can run this in and get this pretty loose now. Not as loose as with this because the spring moves further. The spring will spread out further. But things can still get looser. See, I can actually move this around. See? Now if I tighten it back down, most of that's going to go away. And counterclockwise tightens it down. Kind of unintuitive from other things you may have done with stuff. Yeah, now it's much tighter. I can't barely move it now. Okay. So that's how you adjust this pedal set. It's easier to do on the bench, obviously, than it would be mounted to your rig, but it's still doable, I think, depending on the tools that you have available. And this just makes it a little faster when you have something like that. But again, just doing it manually with your wrench like this is a 13 mil, by the way. That's a 13 millimeter. And this is a 6 mil again back here. You can just do it that way and get the same job done. Just going to take you a little longer. Now, before we stop, let's go ahead and talk about the durometer or the shore ratings on these durometers. This is the black ones. And I'm going to go ahead and put this on here. And I don't know if you guys will see this well or not, but I'll call it out. All right, so there we have 70, it looks like. Let me take another measurement because sometimes it'll be a little different. There we go. That's 75 right there. Depends on where you hit these things sometimes. Okay, let's make sure I get on it good. Okay, now we have 80. I think it's 80. Let's try the other one, see where it goes. So black looks like it's 80. Yeah, the other one's 80 also. Now we'll go to the red one. See what we have here. Ooh, and that's a 94. I'm guessing that's probably supposed to be between a 90 and 95 for the red. Let's try this other red one. Should be about the same if they're cutting it from the same material. Yeah, that's about the same thing, 94. So the yellow must be the softer one. Let's see. 85 on this yellow one. What was my black one? 80. So the black one's the softer one. In fact, as I push harder, it kind of backs off a little bit. Yeah. How did I get 80 on that before? Yep, 75 there. Thought it was 80 before. Well, 75 there too. Okay. So 75, the black is the softest. The yellow would be the next in line at 85. And we have red. They're sitting here at about 94, 95. So I'm guessing they may call this a 90. And yeah, they might call this an 80 and this one a 70. So that tells you which ones you want to put in based on if you want to go softer or you want to go harder as far as your brake feel underfoot. And I think I'm going to leave mine here. I am going to turn my aluminum piece so I can see the Simforge logo again. And yeah, everything's lined up now. Everything's good. Not that hard to do. It's a little fiddly, but now that I showed you the process and what you want to pay attention to as you're doing this, it shouldn't be too bad. So now we're going to mount our pedals to our pedal base. And this comes with your kit, by the way. This is not an accessory that you have to spend extra money on. That's a pretty good deal, I think, for $333. It consists of some profile. We have one piece of 40 series 120, which has 3 channels in it. And I'm going to tilt this up, and this is going to slide around because I've already got it loose to show you how this heel tray works. There we go. And we have 2 single pieces of 40 series here supported by some gusseted corner brackets. Very solid little structure here. It should do its job quite well, I think. I don't have any reservations about it. And of course, as you can see, this will slide back and forth, our tray, and it will go up and down. So when it goes up in the slot, this kind of rocks up. That's the way the design is. And you can change the holes if you need to, but everything's set up where I need it to be right now, except for I got to figure out where I need this tray to be as far as in relation to where the pedals are in the back here once they're in the slot, because I want to make sure I have plenty of room to adjust the pedals back and forth. The pedals have these flanges you may have seen in the closer look, and I just want to make sure that I have all the range in that flange available to me without bumping into my pedal tray. So I'm just going to hold this pedal in here like this. Now push it forward. I'm already hitting it, so I'm going to back this off a little. If you pull it too far, it kind of droops off the end there. But we can hold that up and tighten it so it doesn't really matter. All right. So I'm just going to look down here, and that's it right there. That's all I've got as far as before the bolts are actually going to be at the end of the channels in this flange here. All right. So now I can just kind of move this forward until I touch it, and I'm going to back off a little. I just don't want it hitting when the pedal returns to its position. Now once I have this, I'm going to take my 5mm wrench and go ahead and tighten these bolts up in the bottom first. Now they have these T-nuts on there that you may have seen in the closer look, and you got to watch those things and make sure they turn in the channel. So you have to back them out sometimes to get them enough room so they twist when you start to tighten it up. Like, like that. There you go. It twisted. So you can actually look on the side there and see it. I like these T-nuts. This is the only catch or gotcha for these things. Other than that, I really like them because you can still drop things straight into the channel even after you've got things already sealed off. I'll show you that in a minute here. So we'll go over and do the same thing over here. Let's go ahead and make sure this guy's going to turn. And it does. Good. And this one turns. Beautiful. All right, get the pedal back off. Now we're going to tighten up these bolts here. And there's 2 on each side, obviously. And I'll show you where they are. At least the guys can see them down there. Got one up there and one down there. Now I could hold it like this and try to tighten it up, and I'm going to be using a regular 1/4-inch driver with a 10 mil socket on the end of it. And of course, what I've been using, this 5mm wrench. I could do this and kind of hold it in there and wiggle around, but probably the easiest thing is just to sit it down. Save myself some trouble. I'm going to go ahead and get these tightened up. We have 4 to do. There's nylock nuts, so you have to use a wrench even to get them snugged up. So get it on there. There we go. Only a couple turns though, so you don't have to go too far with it. Like that. One more and we're done. We are home, baby. So now our heel tray is securely fastened to the base plate. It's not going anywhere, which is nice. This is really good design here because I like something that's firm, so if you slip your foot off the pedal or whack this thing, or you're getting in the cockpit and you whack it, it doesn't go anywhere. Very cool. Very nice solid piece here. Now, I've got this. I'm going to check it one more time. Make sure I got it right, and I did. Okay, so we're good to go. Now, before I put the pedals on and take a look at some other things, this is how we're going to be mounting them. We've got a washer here. These are thick washers that come with this, by the way. It's a 3mm washer. This is an M6 bolt, 10mm long. That's all you need, apparently. Socket head cap, stainless steel unit, very nice. And we have that T-nut that I was just telling you about right here. And you can see that there is a kind of a radius on one corner here versus this guy over here is sharp. So it kind of goes like this and then falls down in the same way on the other side. That's so when we tighten this up, we're turning the bolt this way, clockwise. That causes this nut to rotate. Show you there. Rotate clockwise in the channel. And then it tightens up and pulls against the sides of the channel. Very cool. Now, because of the way these things work, we can just drop them in. But before we drop in one that I've already done, I'm going to show you these corner brackets. I've already got 2 of them on this side. This is the mounting interface we're going to be using to mount it to whatever you're going to mount this to. So we've got these nice slots in here, so there is some adjustability. And we have some M8 bolts in here. These are button heads. And we have these inserts. If you didn't see the closer look, I'll show you here. They press in some inserts into this 120 piece, this 40-120. So that is an M8 insert. So we can put the bolts in. The bolts are these guys. M8s, stainless steel units, but button heads. Very simple to put this on. This is going to be a very sturdy base plate, I can already tell. And what I usually do when I'm doing something like this is I'll go ahead and drop the bolt in. Then I'll get my wrench on it so I can keep pressure on it and locate it exactly where I want it to be. And I'm just kind of looking at that insert and the threads. Get it started very carefully. Then you're good to go. And these things really go in easy too. These inserts are pretty good quality. All right, so we'll do this one over here and then we'll be done. We'll have all of our corner brackets on. Well, I did want to show you this real quick though. These corner brackets have tabs on them. See those tabs? And they're going to fit in this channel and in the bottom channel down there. And it's going to be an anti-rotation feature there. See that? Well, if I get it on there. So it keeps it from rotating. Very cool. Go ahead and throw this bolt in. It's a well thought out system here. It's good to see somebody doing this kind of a build, you know, especially at the price point, $333, showing you that it can be done for less money. I really like what's going on here with this kit. We have everything mounted now except for the pedals, obviously. And I'm going to show you, I got one pre-done with the T-nuts already in it. You can see there's our M6 bolt. We have that thick washer in there. Then we have our T-nut. Now what I'm going to do is turn these all the same direction before I set it in here. You want to make sure you don't have them too far in either, because you want them, you want these to go ahead and go all the way down to the channel so they'll turn like they're supposed to. But if you turn them like this, because that's the way the channels are running, this way, you can actually bring it over here, and you might have to adjust forward or backwards on them a little bit, like this one here. But then it just falls right in. How cool is that? But I'm going to go ahead and tighten this one down. And again, I'm looking straight down on here to watch that T-nut to make sure it rotates in the channel. If it doesn't, that means I got to back the bolt out a little bit, give it, and then push down on the bolt, and then rotate it. So we'll see how it goes here. That one's right on. Beautiful. Go back here, this one, see how it's doing. Yep. Hey, man, we're getting... If you give them enough room and space, you don't have to worry about it. It's just to go ahead and do what it's supposed to do. Now, this one did not turn, which means I need to back it out a little, push down on it, and then turn it, and it turned there. There we go. Once you get used to this, piece of cake. Nothing to it. I'm just going to snug it up a little bit now because I don't know exactly where I'm going to have this thing. Now, one more thing I meant to mention. This is a good time to decide where you want the height of your pedal faces to be. Get this a little closer here. The clutch is one I haven't adjusted yet. I'm going to bring my shoe over here that I'm going to be using on the clutch. It's a little bit too low. So sideways here, you see a little better. The ball of my foot's just catching the top of the pedal face. I want it higher than that. Now the throttle's no problem. It's already set up pretty good because it's a longer pedal too. And that fits exactly where I want it to be. My shoes are going to be more of a straight up angle. I know some people sit like this. Their feet are like this when they're using it. But I'm usually closer because of the sitting position I have in my cockpit to a straight up position. Not quite straight up, obviously, but closer to the pedal down here. And that's perfect for the throttle pedal. And I've already adjusted, let me go ahead and take this guy off, the brake pedal. So we'll go ahead and put that up here. All the way as far as it'll go. I have the screws in the bottommost holes that I can get it in, and also have it raised as high as I can get it in the slots in the back. I can't get any higher because this bolt back here and the nut is hitting the spreader here, so there's nothing you can do about that. But I got it where I need it to be. I think it'll be just fine. Right. So now I'm going to put my, go ahead and just use this one. And that's okay. When I put the angle on the pedal, ball of my foot is going to be right in the sweet spot on that brake pedal face, so I'll be able to regulate that braking the way I want to, as far as your threshold, and then when you transition into the trail, braking as you rotate the car, and you get it set up to hit the right apex, so you get through the turn very quickly. But the clutch is too low, so I'm going to fix that. Not only that, but the brake pedal itself is a little bit off angle. It's a little bit set back from the throttle on the angle part. So I'm going to, and the reason is I've raised the throttle up to the third hole from the bottom. If you saw the adjustments, you saw me do that. So I'm in the third hole from the bottom hole. 1, 2, 3. Now the brake pedal is on the second hole. So I'm just going to raise that up. Very simple. You just take these bolts out if you saw the adjustments, one on each side, take them out, slide them up, done. And you're going to loosen these guys too, by the way, so it'll be able to move. But if you don't know how to do that, just go look at the adjustments and that'll be pretty self-evident, I think. No worries. So that's about it. Except for the electronics, this is the load cell amplifier circuit. You may have seen when we were talking about the brake pedal. This has 3M adhesive on the back. I'm going to stick it right here because there's really no other place to put it. You can't put it up here because then you won't be able to adjust this way with the pedals the way you want to. Now the good news is this is going away. I've talked to the manufacturer about some of the things here with this pedal set, and they will be changing this to an integrated load cell amplifier circuit on their main board here. So it'll just be one board moving forward, and then they're going to send me one once they get one. But right now we're just going to mount it like this with a 3M, and then I'll be able to plug it in, obviously, with these RJ45 ports and plug it into here where it needs to go. And it's easy to see where these go, by the way. We have, let's see which one's which. Okay, here we've got the accelerator. See that little thing there? It says AC. Then next to that on top, in the middle, you might be able to see it through the plex there. It says BR for brake. And then over here we have the clutch. Yeah, CL. Look like a D. But that's a CL in there. I don't know how well you can see that without maybe blinding you with some glare there. So easy enough. Now, one thing about this is, and it's curious, the way that they set this up, they have one bolt here, they have one bolt here, and it's obviously they have standoffs, plastic on each side. But it doesn't want to sit flat like that. So that's okay because I'm going to be mounting it somewhere on my chassis. I'm not sure where. I've got up to 3 meters to, not 3 meters, but about 1 meter to go as far as the length of the cables, if you saw that part on the closer look, to plug this in. So I'm probably just going to put some Velcro on the bottom here, and then Velcro wherever I'm going to actually sit it down on, and then set it down. Now I'm going to have something that's narrow enough to get through these bolts, either this way or this way, because of the way it's situated. But we'll get it figured out. No big deal. So that's it. What we'll do is go ahead and secure the pedals. I'm going to adjust the angles to get them where I want them. Then we'll go over and mount it on my pedal tray. When we come back, we'll take a look and see how that went. So we have the pedals mounted now. Everything went pretty smoothly. This is a heavy kit. When I pulled it off the bench, I noticed how heavy it was, so I weighed it, and it came out to 20 pounds and 8.5 ounces, or 9.3 kilos. Pretty heavy. We used the corner brackets. I did deploy the corner bracket in the front here with another T, not because of the way my pedal tray works. But that's the beauty of this profile. You can get this thing set up pretty much any way you want to. Now we'll go over here and look at the electronics. Like I said, I was going to stick the load cell amplifier circuit board on the back of the profile, and that's working out quite well. And we have the electronic board down here on some Velcro, and that's pretty stiff, so I'm not worried about that moving around too much. Everything's working well, so yeah, no problems there. We've got all our cables connected. Good to go so far. And it tested out pretty good. We'll go around here and look at the front. And yeah, I think they look pretty good in there. I did raise up the clutch pedal, the face, as high as I could get it to match the brake, and the throttle, pretty much, I didn't have to mess with that. So yeah, everything looks good here. I like the way this went together. So all we have to do now is get into the rig and do some driving. We're in iRacing at Sebring and the Lotus 79 for some heel and toe shifting. This is a great way to test a 3-pedal set. Yeah, you can put a lot of stress on them and see how they respond to that. You can break them, or if, you know, they bend on you or something like that. So when you're hammering away like this on them, and I am doing that, I'm not taking it easy on these pedals. I'm stabbing them pretty good. In fact, you can see some motion when I'm doing it, and that is not the pedal base and the pedals, by the way. And you'll see that once we get out of the H pattern shifting part. It's actually the whole rig's kind of moving because I'm really stomping on the pedals, so everything kind of moves forward a little bit because the rig is all the way up to its middle position. That's why you see the flashing lights over there by the emergency button. So yeah, when it's that high and I'm throwing my weight around, it moves a little bit. So it's not the pedals actually moving, it's the whole rig is when I'm stomping. If you watch the wheel base upright, you'll see that. So I just want to make sure you didn't think that was the pedals or the pedal base. It's very solid. In fact, it's more solid than I thought it would be once I had it bolted down, but it is like 20-some pounds. So yeah, it's doing a good job here as far as letting you feel what the pedals are doing, and that's the most important thing. Underfoot, what does it feel like? The throttle is good. It's not the best throttle I've had under my foot, but I wasn't expecting that. The resolution is good enough, but the throw to get the maximum resolution was a bit much for me and my ankle. I couldn't get my ankle to feel right with that kind of throw, so I had to back my stop up, and you can see it in the video here. The stop's actually backed up more towards the front than it is the rear, and that did cut down on some of my resolution, but didn't cut it down so much that I couldn't adapt to it, and yeah, still accelerate smoothly out of corners and through corners like this one here, turn 17, which is a very hard one to do that in. And yeah, this Lotus, by the way, is very hard to do that with because it's very powerful and a very light car. Now, the brake itself, if you'll notice, I have gone to the red bumpers in the stack there, and I kept the yellow spring. I'm still not sure if I'm going to keep the yellow spring or go to the red, but I was able to adapt well enough to be able to control the car like I need to in my threshold and in my trail braking when I'm actually coming back off the brake a little bit to initiate turn in. Now, again, the brake is something very subjective, and I do like a load cell because it's pressure based, and you do get a good feel here, I think, for what the car is doing. Not the best that I've ever had, but yeah, again, as I've been saying throughout this review, at $333 plus shipping, you know, you can't complain too much here. It's a solid set underfoot, and that's the main thing. The clutch mechanism. Well, like most clutches, when they're on the bench or you're sitting in your cockpit just manipulating it or actioning it, you can feel that pressure plate feeling in that part of the clutch like we could on the bench. But yeah, once you're doing this, stabbing at it, it all goes away. You're just stabbing at a pedal after that's done. But yeah, heel and toe shifting, putting a lot of pressure on these pedals. They responded quite well. I really tried to find something that I could really complain about, and I couldn't. They just took whatever I gave them, and I put a few hours on these pedals doing this because really it was pretty easy to do. I kind of took to it pretty quick. It didn't take me long to come up to speed on those pedals using my heel and toe. Now we're going to calm things down a little bit and get into the left foot braking mode on the pedals. And here's where you can really start feeling the fine nuances of what this pedal set's delivering. And they do feel good underfoot. There is some flex in the system in the base plate where the pedals are flexing from where they're connected to the base plate. And you'll see that in the video here, as when I get into the heavy braking zones, like coming up here, you'll see that we got some movement here when I'm hard on the brakes. Other than that, though, there's really not much going on as far as where the flex and softness is underfoot. Now, I think it's meeting expectations here as far as being soft underfoot. And I wasn't expecting the stiffest pedals in the world. The important thing is, are they too soft that you can't adapt to them and feel what the car is doing or the pedal is feeling underfoot? But I didn't think they're that soft. I think they came out to give me a good driving experience because I was able to adapt. And that's the main thing. Can you adapt to this pedal set? And I was able to do that and get pretty close to my consistent times that I do here in the 488 GT3. So yeah, I think meeting expectations in that department, but it really exceeds, the set as a whole exceeds expectations in general, I think, at the end of the day. I kind of like these pedals. Final thoughts on the Simforge MARK-1 pedal set. Out of the box, this pedal set started exceeding my expectations considering the price point that they come in at. They are constructed from 3mm steel plate that is sporting a nice black powder coat finish. All the edges of the metal plates and pieces were well finished, with no burrs left over from the manufacturing process. The pedal faces are well done, with appropriate shapes and sizes for each. The brake pedal has an 80 kilogram load cell. The kit comes with a good assortment of polyurethane bumpers that allow me to dial in a good feel in threshold and trail braking situations. The throttle and clutch pedal have a contactless Hall sensor setup that can be adjusted for sensitivity, something I did not expect considering the MARK-1's price. There are 3D printed PLA fixtures in the pedal structures that are used for fixing electronic bits but not used for any load-bearing duties. You can download the 3D files for these parts and print them out yourself if you want a different color. All fixing bolts and nuts in the kit are made from stainless steel. All parts were present, so no trips to the local hardware store to source missing bits. There is an ample amount of adjustment available in each pedal, allowing most sim racers to be able to dial in a good setting, I think. The included pedal tray is constructed from 40 series aluminum profiles. It felt solid on the bench and has enough mass to allow a good feel for the pedal's available tactile feedback. The heel plate is finished in a red gloss powder coat. Like the rest of this kit, it has a good amount of adjustability in its design. Once I had everything mounted and adjusted to my taste, it was time to put them through some rigorous testing. As usual, I put them through a few hours of heel and toe use. This puts a lot of pressure on any pedal set and allows me to see how they react to this type of treatment. Although they did not transmit the quality feel of some much more expensive pedal sets I've tested, they do deliver a satisfying driving experience. I was able to get up to speed without any dramas after a few initial laps. The MARK-1s did allow me to achieve lap times that were very consistent. Not as fast as my best lap times, but consistent nonetheless. And really, at the end of the day, that is what a pedal set is supposed to do. The Simforge MARK-1 pedal set met most of my expectations and exceeded some for a pedal set that cost $330 plus shipping. It certainly seems to be just as good or better than some pedal sets I've tested in the past that cost a bit more. I'm Barry Rowland. Thanks again for watching the Sim Racing Garage channel. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you would like to help support what I do here at the SRG, visit my website at simracinggarage.com.